Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank our panel, all of them, for being here today. I do want to say that I think some of the information being presented here comes from folks who live in an alternate universe where they've never worked in the private sector. Recommendations coming in from folks who've never worked in a private sector and have no idea what it cost in addition to the direct cost to comply with such government rules and regulations. And I want to say that Dr. Bernstein said everybody should be paid fairly, and I agree with that. But there are many people in this country, Dr. Bernstein, who work in nonprofits who don't do it for the money. As Ms. Sharby has said, they do it out of a sense of mission. And they make that choice when they go there, just like we don't pay our teachers enough in this country, in my opinion. But they know when they go to those jobs what the pay is going to be, and they do it out of a sense of mission. And I think that's perfectly fine. We need to continue our civil society, organizations outside the control of government who have that sense of mission. It's part of what makes us such a great country. Mr. Passantino, I think that General Rounds was getting to this point, but I'd like to ask you if you would talk a little bit about the areas where the Department of Labor may have underestimated the cost of compliance with this, because we know historically these government agencies, again, live in an alternate universe and have no idea what it costs to implement the rules and regulations. Would you say a little bit more about the cost of compliance for these rules?
Sure, and I think a lot of the cost of compliance is not simply complying with this rule, it's what this rule forces employers to do in the context of other regulations. So it's not simply, do we look at the increased salary and what that increased salary level does to a particular employee and whether that's an added cost, and whether as a result of that employee getting a raise, that employee's supervisor then has to get a raise, and that's an additional cost. You also have to look at the overtime payments that are going to be made to the employees who are reclassified as non-exempt. You need to look at the cost of implementing timekeeping systems. You need to look at the costs of additional, frankly, legal advice and HR work to determine what's compensable, what's paid time for employees who are not used to keeping track of time, who are not used to punching a clock, who have the freedom to use their computers at home and mobile devices. And for the first time, these employers are going to have to make decisions on whether that's paid time and where the particular time begins and ends.
Great. And I want to follow up a little bit on the adequacy of keeping records. The Labor Department's guidance accompanying the final rule says there's no requirement that employees punch in and punch out. You talked about the challenges of sitting in the school pickup line, for example, and sending out emails or answering a telephone call before work, after work, miscellaneous things that all of us do. But to that point, the guidance specifies for an employee who works a fixed schedule, an employer need not track the employee's exact hours worked each day. But considering the ever-increasing threat of litigation on the wage and hour front, is it ever advisable for employers to forego tracking hours for overtime eligible employees?
I mean, it's a huge mistake to say we're not going to track those hours. Sure, if somebody is always going to work 9 to 5 every day, the rule says you can keep track of time that way, and they can mark a box that says, yes, that's what I worked today. Given the nature of the employees who are going to fall in this reclassification, given the nature of the workplace and the reliance on electronic devices, given the fact that there are lawsuits filed each and every day over 6 minutes here and 6 minutes there, it's a mistake not to keep track of those hours religiously for employers, to make sure that they are capturing, whether somebody works 8 hours or whether they work 8 hours and 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. And in my last 13 seconds, I want to say to Ms. Sherby's comments, she points in here, Easter SEALs cannot afford to pay overtime, and the children with disabilities we serve are the ones who will suffer the most. And I think it's really important that we understand the most vulnerable in our country are going to be punished by these rules. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady yields back. Ms. Bonamici.